Welcome, everyone. Good afternoon, and welcome to the third Pork Academy session, How Pork Powers Your Plate in the Industry. My name is Isabel Rodriguez. I am starting my second year of master's degree at Iowa State University. My work focuses on animal reproduction, and I look at sire fertility and the steps leading up to fertilization. I am honored to have been selected as a 2023 Real Pork Scholars, and one of my favorite things that we've done so far in this program has been all the networking opportunities. So not only with our cohort and our industry mentors, but also with all of you and all of the people in the pork industry. So the first thing we would like to do, there's me. The first thing we would like to do is to encourage you to scan our QR code and subscribe to the Pork Checkoff News. And I would like to introduce Dr. Kristen Hicks-Roof. She will be our moderator and speaker for this session. And she has recently been named the Director of Human Nutrition after serving a year as the Director of Nutrition Research at the National Pork Board. So she has over 10 years of expertise in nutrition, communication, and leadership. So welcome, Dr. HR.
Thank you so much. We appreciate you introducing us, and we have a rock star panel. I will tell you, you are in for a treat. So before we get started, we're going to take a few moments and review the antitrust statement. Okay, here. All right, so I'm going to go back. Well, no, I'll do intros. So I'm excited to introduce both of the speakers that are going to help, and we're going to have a great conversation to showcase human nutrition at the state level all the way to the consumer, right? And so we have Cheryl Day. She's with Ohio Pork Council. Cheryl's dedicated to speaking out for agriculture to protect the industry, right? Protecting science and protecting agriculture, really for the next generation to come. She serves as an agent for change. I love that, whoever wrote that. A thought leader and a passionate and practical voice for the industry. So Cheryl is going to be one of our speakers. And our second speaker that I've got to spend the last 2 hours doing media interviews with is Erin Good. She's a registered dietitian, and she currently works for HighV as a corporate dietitian. She is a nutrition expert, I will tell you, and she really prides herself on delivering credible nutrition information to the consumer. And you could tell she's so passionate about the consumer and really helping them to where they're at. So I'm going way off script here. She appears weekly on HighV's YouTube channel in the series titled HighV Healthy You, where she provides deliciously simple meal ideas. So like I said, we are in for a treat today, really to showcase how the human nutrition plays a role across the spectrum, across the industry, and why it's a critical moment for pork to be able to embrace the human nutrition and talk to our consumers who care about nutrition. So here at the National Pork Board, we have 3 core pillars under our human nutrition. One of them is the science. That's really what I focus on, is how do we have research so that way we can go out and talk to consumers and talk to health professionals, credible information about pork nutrition and why it's so important for human health. We have the endorsement, who my lovely colleague, Emily Krause, manages, and it's really embracing and talking to the health professional community. And you'll hear some stories about Emily's relationships and how she's grown and developed that community and its impacts. And then we have the story, and it's all about how are we taking this great research and science and communicating it to a consumer, right? And if it was me communicating to a consumer, I would talk about research all day, and that may not be what consumers exactly want to hear. So it's being able to distill that down, and so we're really showcasing what's important to pork and how to get people in the pork category and staying in the pork category because they know pork is good for them and good for their family, and that's really what we want to showcase. But how do you change people's opinions and behaviors? I mean, this is a complex thing. Erin and I are both dietitians. This is a whole complex process. But first and foremost, it starts with research. If we understand the role of pork in human health, we will better be able to communicate that role. So doing research, and we have 24 research studies underway on pork and human health. And so our story will be able to be told and showcased to every stakeholder, whether you're a producer, a packer, a processor, a dietitian, a state representative, a consumer. We can talk about the pork story. We then use that research to leverage and message, right? We want to showcase pork nutrition and how it's a high quality protein for the human body. We want to showcase that. We want to subvert people's ingrained beliefs that pork is not good for them. Everyone in this room, love pork, right? And we want everyone else to love pork. And we do that by taking the science and transitioning it into telling them what they want to hear and what's credible evidence, so that way they know that it's true and it's not just our opinions, even though we love opinions. And then ultimately, we take that messaging and we deliver it to many different avenues. So Emily works with the state associations and work with her Pork and Partners community to educate health professionals, so that way when you go to your doctor's office the next time, they don't tell you to avoid red meat, right? Raise your hand if you've ever been in that conversation or you've heard from a friend, limit red meat, right? So we need science to get the messaging to go to the health professional. And that's exactly what we're doing here at the National Pork Board. And what we do here is we shift the tone, right? We shift from a reactive, negative message about pork to a proactive, exciting, positive message. Pork is that premier protein for you and your family, and we're excited to share it with you on your plate or in your bowl. So like I said, we have many different studies looking at various things, anywhere from brain health, which is very exciting as we think about the aging population. We talk a lot about flavor. We had a recent flavor study in, so if you want to meet with me afterwards, I would love to talk about research in flavor. But anything from, children to affordability to weight loss. So it's exciting, the investment that the National Pork Board of Directors has made in human nutrition, and we can see that across the board. So what do we do with this research, right? So we had three recent research studies come out. And I will tell you, we are not just going to have this research come out and sit on a shelf. Instead, we're going to do something with it. We're going to talk to people. And you're going to see some great examples about how we take this research and we talk to the state partners to go out and act. We talk to the dietitians to go out and act. And so I'm followed up by incredible people that are going to inspire you on how they take this pork messaging that we have at the National Pork Board and deliver it to every audience that we possibly can. And we are delivering it to a lot of people because people need to know pork's story, and we have the perfect team to be able to do that. So one of those teams is Pork and Partners. I've talked to you about it. You're going to hear about Erin's example as she was a past roadshow attendee with Pork and Partners. So we engage with our healthcare professionals in digital space. We know that health professionals are in the digital space. We embrace them as ambassadors. So Erin is a great example of an ambassador that's being able to talk about the truths of pork and how pork can be that premier protein option for their consumers at retail. We deliver pork nutrition education. I can't tell you how many people do not know about pork nutrition. It actually blows my mind. Every meeting we go to, people have no idea. But when you educate them, you inspire them, and you teach them, then they try it. And when they try it, they love it. They come back, and that's how we're going to win. And that also deals with the in-person engagement, that we do some culinary demos and lots of fun stuff to be able to teach these health professionals. And so here's just some pictures, and you're going to hear more of the story about working with state pork associations. So we work very closely with the state associations to support, empower, and embrace the nutrition message. And we just get to talk pork. People get to try pork. We've had so many people say, wow, this is delicious. Yeah, when it's cooked right, the 145 with a 3-minute rest, it is delicious. It's not your 170 brick, right? Yeah, it's really good. And when we do things like a roadshow that inspires and educates registered dietitians and health professionals, we get earned media. We don't have to pay for it. They now have the knowledge that we had a segment on Good Morning America the other day. And that is a huge win for the pork industry, right? Talking about pork on the local, state, national, and international level on why pork is that premier protein for the American people and people worldwide. And lastly, like I said, our third part is our story. And our story is about communicating and subverting people's ingrained belief about pork. And so we talk a lot, and you're going to see this example, the Get in the Zone with Pork, with Ohio Pork, that Cheryl is going to speak to. But it's getting people excited about pork, to showcase pork in different ways and served in different ways. So I'm going to leave it to that. There is my email. If you ever have a pork nutrition question, I'm your gal. And I will respond to every email, especially every producer sitting in here, because I am here to help you and everything that you do, because we appreciate you producing a high-quality protein, and that makes us do our job the best that we can do. So I'm going to pass it over to Cheryl.
Thank you. So I kind of got the great privilege to sit between two dietitians, and I will say that I am definitely not a dietitian. And probably most of my life I wasn't a healthy nut by any means. Probably just did what I had to do to get by. But as you get older, you realize you're not metabolizing as you should, and you're not eating as healthy. And this was kind of dear to my heart. But I wanted to come to you as a state exec and how we fit into this role, and what we do every day in the States to work with Team Pork and as a big picture. So just help us out here a little bit. To raise a hand, how many of you are actually producers in the room? Good, quite a few. So how many of you are in the allied industry area? There's nothing wrong with that. And I know we have some real pork scholars, right? Let's recognize them one more time. Okay, cool. So I just want to get a good handle, because I charge my team at Ohio Pork to be farmer first. I say everything that we do, you're taking care of those farmers' checkoff dollars. How are you going to use them wisely? How do you think they want you to do with their checkoff dollars? And they're going to tell you they want you to sell more pork, right? Everything that we do from the national level to state level is about returning an investment on that checkoff dollars. So it is part of my job as state exec is to be at that bigger picture, because every day I juggle different topics and different segments of the industry. But when I really came to think, why would human nutrition be so valuable to us selling more pork? And that's where I was like, all in. When Kristen and Emily said we're gonna have an early adopter group, I raised my hand pretty loudly, because I saw it too. And so here's what I saw from a state exec position. One Wall Street Journal article. I read a lot of policy news stories, especially if it's consumer-based, reading all the time. But I look at the comments, because I've done the media gig, to be transparent. And you do know I got to do it from an ag aspect, so that was a little bit more special. But you do know that the media person writing the story has an angle, right? So I go look at the comments. How did people read that story, and what did they think about your industry? This one article, the same author at Wall Street Journal writes about once a month on food-related issues. Over 700 comments. Of this one article, 83 of them were human and nutrition comments. They were, I'm eating less red meat. I love bacon, but I just can't do it anymore. And we can all argue about bacon and the other cuts of pork. Just don't go talk to my rep from Ohio who's lost, I don't know how many pounds of weight Dwayne has lost on bacon, but we'll discuss that another day. But they're constantly talking about how meat's bad for you, how pork is a dirty meat, that pork is not good for your health. And you can tell by their comments and analyzing how they're writing, they really mean this. And this is what they're saying every day. So this concerns me, right, as a state exec. Because if I'm in charge of your checkoff dollars to sell more pork, I'm seeing a huge problem here. The other thing that kind of opened my eyes is I was in a room doing a different tactic, doing different sessions, and I was talking to some younger professionals in the ag world, some farm background. They said, you know what? You know what gets me excited? Eating as clean as I can eat. I totally wiped out everything in my cabinets, ketchups, mustards, threw them away because it's processed, and I'm only eating clean. And it's like they get a special high off of just eating clean. And it sounds crazy, but that is going on right now. They're chasing that. And they realize, the farm background, that pork or even beef or chicken as a pure protein is a good thing. So we need to, light bulb, right? We need to really optimize and grab that opportunity. And so that's why at Ohio Pork, I know that we weren't doing as much for pork promotion. We had to get our game on. We had not moved fast enough for our producers, and I like to move and act quicker. And if I'm not moving fast enough, then that means we're way behind the 8 ball. So here we go. So here's what we did. So I'm sorry, before I jump into that, so one thing I want to challenge you as a producer before I jump into what we did, especially if you're someone raising pigs or even in the industry, I hear every day and I hear you loud and clear. Please educate the consumer about what we're doing in the barns every day. Agree. I challenge you guys to use your voice, tell your farm story. However, I do want to caution you. I don't want you to think that we need to continue to just educate the consumer. We've got to meet them where they're at, right? Our consumer base has really changed. Our consumer already knows what they want to an extent. Is there room for education, that movable middle? Absolutely. But as farmers, I think we need to do our due diligence and understand the consumer exactly where they're at today. And one thing that I will say that Pork Board also has going on is the data segmentation work, that is identifying the consumer, not by age. We're not going to do it by generation. We're going to do it how many have taken the quiz? How many of you are confident meat eaters? Yeah. Simple feeders? That tends to be all of us. But we need to meet those different segmentation of consumers, right? And one thing that stuck out to me was those mindful choices, right? That's where these health, nutrition people fall. But I'm a confident meat eater, but I am mindful about what I'm eating too. So there is bleed over. I think the nutrition space is where we bleed over from those consumer segmentations. So at Ohio Pork, we had budgeted different levels of our budget, and we actually, ironically, had put on our non-checkoff side, for those in the room that understands the checkoff and the non-checkoff, emergency funds for imaging or build trust, or we have an issue that comes up. And we got to the end of the fiscal year, and we're getting close to March Madness. I have a weird fiscal year, but we hadn't used all our funds. And I'm thinking, if we don't need emergency spending on pork demand, it's right now, right? How can we move the needle in Ohio to start talking to our consumer more intentional about pork protein or the nutritional space? And we had been looking for a health influencer, just couldn't find that right person. So first thing we dived into is a March Madness. I have a team that does love sports way more than I do. I'm going to be in a minute. And I'm glad, and they're younger, and I'm glad that they challenge us every day. But we had this opportunity that was pitched at us, and we get opportunities a lot. So the agency for ESPN says we can hit the 3 C's. So in Ohio, we call it the 3 C's: Columbus, Cincinnati, and Cleveland. And they are all different personalities. I envy Illinois. They always talk about Chicago. You just have Chicago. We have these 3 cities. They all think alike. They all eat differently. What their issues are completely different. So we were like, okay, we got to go after the 3 C's. And we have this little Lake Erie problem in Toledo that has an image issue, and they bleed over into Cleveland. So we always lump Toledo in there. And we tried very hard to, how are we going to sell more pork? And one thing we were like, we need to meet them at a different level than we've been doing. And so when I got to see the assets from National Pork Board on the Surprisingly Pork campaign, it is bright. It is colorful. It talks about the nutritional value of pork. It also talks about pork being an ingredient, how it can fit in their lives. So no matter what segmentation really they fit as a consumer, it's there. That information's in that. It was a low buy for us. And we could go in and do digital ads around March Madness. But what's the key to March Madness if you're a consumer? They tune in live. They're watching the games live. The other thing that we hit, the women basketball hype, right? And Cleveland was hosting the women finals. So we started at a very low rate per city. We spent $5,000 per city for these digital ads to follow people around in their spaces that fit the demographics, right? That fit was following ESPN, they're younger, it was all ages. It was just, would they be open to having a pork message at them? And so we used the assets of Surprisingly Pork, just as the dietitian team has been using in Pork and Partners. And we put it in videos, we put it in digital ads, and we went to these 3 things. 2 weeks in, we get a feedback that we've blown past their benchmarks. They have never seen such a response to such new ads. So we're like, okay, my board's looking at me and says, we've got extra money, throw it back in the pot. And we added Dayton when the semifinals were going on. So whether most of them were, whether they were streaming, they were on their phones, or on their laptops, of course, if you hit the demographics, these ads are following you around. We actually got one Facebook message so that they've been bugged like 20 times. And I'm like, well, good, you saw it, that's cool. So didn't bother me, but we really know that the ads played well, and it was a low investment. And one thing we've been learning in Pork Board study is that Ohio is one of the 10 states we have to win in pork demand. But Ohio is also very much part that loves the barbecue community, so they already do kind of like pork. We just got to tap the 3 C's, the big cities. And this was one way we could reach them in a whole new avenue that we had not. We'd done OSU football stuff, but not at this level. So we took those Surprisingly Pork ads and really got to use them and test them out. And we have said the campaign was very successful. And we were really grateful that we got that opportunity to partner with National Pork Board and David Newman's team to be able to create these ads. Here's another example. I wanted very much to see the ads in motion as they were going on. You can see the big stories that were going on, but here are the ads as they floated in and out, and basically just screenshots straight from the campaign person that ran our ads. Another thing we're doing is we wanted to find a health influencer, and we were struggling. One fiscal year, we ended up letting the money just move past because we could not find that right health influencer. I will act quickly, but I won't spend money on junk. So if I can't find the right influencer, then we'll just see until we can find one. Luckily, Emily had been at an event with Rich Deaton and a Pork and Partners event, and they were talking about this, and she hooked us up with Ashley Martinez, and Ashley is a Bengals cheerleader. But what you also don't know about Ashley is her real job is she's a dietitian. And she worked for Kroger at the time when we first were introduced to her, and now she is freelancing. We are now teaming up with Ashley. We had a national grant for chef education because we're trying to get more pork on the restaurant menus, the other thing we were doing. And we were having a hard time reaching that group. So she went into the culinary group and she taught our first group. She does an excellent job of not just showing you how to cook pork well, talk about the nutritional value. So it's an all package. Nutritional value, she cooked it well. She showed them how they could make money off of pork because it's a cheap cut, like take the loin, and make it where those ones that are adventurous would try that meal and come back to a restaurant. So we started there, and then our team is challenging Ashley right now and saying, how can you help us as a health influencer? And she has come back with some cool ideas that we would have never thought about in our silo. And so I think it's important that you team up with people that challenge you back. And she's excited, she's hungry, and we're gonna go on. And if we have not had been part of this early adopter group and hadn't seen this opportunity, we wouldn't have been able to seize it. So those are just great examples that we're doing on the state level, how we can work as one big team from national to the state to the local level to sell more pork.
All right. Hi, everyone. So just by a show of hands, so I'm Erin, and I work for HighV as a corporate dietitian. I know we have all different states in here. If you have a HighV near you, let me see it. Okay, wonderful, great. Has anyone ever worked with their HighV Dietitian? Partnered with them? Nothing. Great. Okay, Charlotte, yeah, okay. So maybe a missed great opportunity after today. So let me just give you a little background. First off, Emily and I go way back. We actually have a mutual connection. We did our internship at the same location. So it was really fun to reconnect with her and, go OSF, St. Francis Medical Center. But so she put me in touch with Pork and Partners, and I was a roadshow attendee last August. This was during the Iowa State Fair, which was a really fun opportunity. So we started off going to the fair. We had pork chops on a stick. We took a selfie. You're getting to know dietitians from around the U.S. Then we take it to the next day, going to the National Pork Board, getting to meet the marketing, some of their upper management. Neil taught us how all the different lean cuts of pork. I could watch that video on repeat because he's so knowledgeable. We also had a dietitian who's also a chef, Chef Abby, who showed us how to cook with pork and really reach maybe a more diverse audience. So the nice thing with Pork and Partners is we really got to strengthen and unify our messaging as dietitians when it comes to pork. So like Kristen mentioned, pork being this ultimate carrier food. This was a term or a phrase I had never used before. But as a dietitian, so when people come to the grocery store to see me, usually it's to improve their health. Maybe they're going on a diet. So they're thinking usually negative, right? It's restriction, poor flavor, boring. Maybe they're just going to eat that one protein every day. And then they come and see me, and I get to share my nutrition knowledge and say, no, I want you to add more to your plate. And this is where pork is a great option because it's going to be that carrier food and add more protein, fiber, potassium to your plate. Oh, so here you can see the pork chop on a stick. It was a really fun opportunity. We also got to network. Also, there were 3 pig farmers, so we got to network with them, hear their stories as well. Charlotte was one of them. And then as an added bonus, from an employer perspective, I was able to walk away with 3 CEU credits or continuing ed credits. So that was also a great thing for my profession and for my employer to see. As dietitians, when we're looking at the research and trying to help meet people where they're at, it usually starts with upping fruits and veggies. Because as you can see, 90% of us aren't eating enough of those. And then it's a great tie-in, though, with pork being that carrier food, having it still in the plate. You don't have to go vegetarian. You don't have to go vegan. You can still have meat, and yet look at all the extra nutrition we're adding to your plate. Whether that is iron, potassium, selenium. So earlier today, we were talking with one of the journalists, and she's really passionate about her sports nutrition because her kiddo's in wrestling. And then she was even concerned as a mom and a female. She's getting older. Maybe her health is starting to change, whether it's menopausal or not. And so I touched on just the importance of selenium, and it's really high in pork tenderloin. So as dietitians, we love to talk about lean cuts of meat. Pork tenderloin usually is, top of mind, and it's so high in selenium and how that is important for thyroid function and how that's even good for mental health for her son who's getting involved in athletics and wanting to be more competitive. So it was just a great, easy conversation. And again, it's not forced. And then the last bullet, as you all know, is not only good for us, but good for the planet. A lot of people are very budget conscious now, especially when it comes to protein, but then also from a cultural perspective as well. So as a HighV dietitian, I'll say boots on the ground. This is Kristen's slogan, I'm taking it. But I am at the grocery store, so I have the best teaching tools at my fingertips, whether that's walking the person to the meat department. We're looking at what are the lean cuts. Then we take it one step further. Maybe I give them a recipe, whether that's a physical recipe card, whether it's showing them a video, if they're a visual learner and they want to see the color and the taste and the steam coming off of the pork. So I have a whole video series. In 2 minutes, they can see the recipe from start to finish. We do a lot of stuff as HighV dietitians. One thing that's also really neat that I think is kind of underrated is we actually do health screenings in the grocery store. So now I have a customer coming in. They're going to get their cholesterol checked with me, And in 15 minutes, I give them their results. So now we have numbers. And then I get to, as the dietitian, provide foods and education that can improve those numbers. So it's just a really great full circle. And then I can take them to the actual department and show them which foods to buy. We can discuss price or what's on sale. So it's just a really neat way. And then I can fax their results to their doctor. So like we're just hitting so many people, and yet it's a really great health community and network. But often when the consumer is talking to me, I feel like sometimes I'm a black hole. They come in my office and I just hear it all. I either hear my doctor said no more red meat, I can only eat chicken. My personal trainer just eats chicken, broccoli, and quinoa. I don't know when that became the superior meal, because it's not. I don't have time to cook. I'm just going to bebops every evening. These are true statements. And just not knowing, the lack of awareness, not knowing what's considered a lean cut of pork. Like Kristen mentioned, not knowing the nutrition that's in the pork. So one thing that HighV dietitians pride themselves on, or we're probably most known for, is what's called a personalized nutrition shopping experience. It's a mouthful, but basically in 45 minutes to an hour, we can walk the grocery store, the aisles with you, and we're talking about foods that fit your lifestyle. So whether that's I need to improve my heart health, I'm concerned about diabetes, I have food allergies, I don't know what to take to Johnny's baseball game. So we meet the consumer where they're at and personalize it. That's one option. It's a great low price point entry to building rapport with that consumer. Now they trust me. They realize I'm not just commission-based. I'm not commission-based, so I don't have to push a supplement or a vitamin on them. Then, though, taking it even further, because I want them to continue to eat pork, right, throughout their lifespan, we have on-demand workshops now. Thanks to COVID, we had time to make videos. So now people could meal prep in an hour about 4 or 5 meals that would last them for a week or 2 weeks. That's freezer friendly. So maybe that's an option for them. We also have a meal plan program. So I just highlighted here, we have a meal plan. It's normally sold as a 4-week meal plan. This is something, I've been with HighV for close to 12 years. People would always stop by my office, do you have a meal plan? For years, I was like, no. And then COVID happened, and what do you know? I got to crunch numbers in an Excel spreadsheet, but now I have a meal plan, and the reason people like it is it's a guide, it outlines, it takes away that question of what to eat for dinner. I feel like I've saved at least 2 marriages because of this meal plan. Isn't that crazy? But I think some of you know where I'm going with that. But so now you can see the consumer is, trusting me again. They're like, oh, okay, so I don't just have to have this protein for dinner every night. So here, balsamic glazed sheet pan pork chops is on the menu. Often it's making extra so they can have it left over for lunch, or maybe additional family members can try it. But usually we're highlighting either sheet pan recipes, a slow cooker recipe, or again, this time of year, saying, hey, you could have pork on the grill, and then educating on that cooking temperature, because we still have some education to go with that. No more hockey pucks. And then lastly, I just wanted to touch on, these are some visuals, again, for that visual learner, or to kind of give more inspiration, but also trying to reach the millennials, the Gen Z, the younger audience, because they care more about their nutrition, whether they are involved in athletics or not, but they really want to fuel their bodies and be more competitive. They care about their mental health more and work-life balance. And so HighV has a kids program as well. It's called HighV Kids Fit. It's all about movement. It's a free online resource, but the dietitians also are involved in it, showcasing easy snack ideas, but also easy meal ideas. So here I just have featured, it's an apple cinnamon pork chop. This is around the holidays. But again, it's got fun, kid-friendly colors and music, and it's just either exposing them to pork or just reiterating, like, this is healthy, it's a lean protein, and look how good this is. Why not have it? I think that was it.
Didn't I tell you we had a rock star panel, right? Aren't you inspired, and is your mouth watering? Especially, we were in interviews and Erin was talking about this Hawaiian slider, and she was detailing it to the point that I think my mouth was salivating, that I'm like, okay, let's move to the next question, right? So we want to just thank you so much for being here, and we are going to open up to questions. What do you want to know from our team up here? And I can walk around a mic. Oh, yeah, you got it.
So I'm on the brighter side of 50, and I went and had blood work done, my wife and I, and so obviously comes back a little high in a few things, and the first thing that the doctor says is that we need to put you on the Mediterranean diet, and I feel like that's every time, and so my question is that instead of trying to beat that wall, is there a way we can fold pork into these Mediterranean diets and things like that where we, instead of us trying to push against what they're saying, is there a way to like fold it in and say, okay, yeah, you can use pork in that Mediterranean diet. And so instead of it just being fish and hummus and all the other crap that I won't eat, can I eat pork somehow?
That is a great question, and I'm sure Aaron will tag team too as on the dietitian perspective. So we are doing research, and we're trying to have more evidence, again, to be able to showcase pork as part of Mediterranean diets. And that's really where those lean 8 come in. Mediterranean diet is about lean proteins, but pork gets forgotten. It gets forgotten to be mentioned in these recommendations. And that's why Emily's work with these health professionals is critical, because then when you go to your doctor or you go to your dietitian, they will mention pork is one of those protein options. So it is. I want to give you comfort that you can have pork, and pork is a high-quality protein that fits as part of many different dietary patterns. And that's really what, Aaron and I as dietitians, we talk a lot about meeting people where they're at. We know doctors are not trained on nutrition. And so it takes time and energy and resources to be able to get there. And the National Pork Board is investing in this, and we're making progress, but it takes time.
I just wanted to say, so as a HighV dietitian, usually our goal is after the consumer comes and meets with us, has an appointment, that they leave happier and more empowered after the session. And so usually, yes, this comes up 9 out of 10 times, Mediterranean diet. And so normally I'll say, well, every year, the diets are ranked from the top to the 50th worst diet. And keto's normally like third from the bottom, but Mediterranean ranks like top 2 or consistently number 1. And how red meat is part of a Mediterranean diet. So I don't know if I should say friends, but the Beef Council does have studies promoting red meat. So then as a dietitian, I can encompass whether that is beef and pork and how it ties into the Mediterranean diet and is okay for heart health. The meal plan program that I showed with the balsamic pork chops, that meal plan, because we crunched the numbers, is considered heart healthy and it's diabetes friendly. So that's also, it's a great resource when I work with customers. It puts their mind at ease of, yes, I can eat this.
And I want to say one more message here. This is part of the reason one of our key messages for health professionals is pork is the ultimate carrier food. Because you still get to eat the pork that you love, but then it will help to carry along more fruits, vegetables, and whole grains. And so that recipe is really interesting, right? You have like peaches and then the whole grain underneath. So yes, you could have just had the pork chop, but instead you pair them all together, and that's going to increase your fiber, which is also going to increase your health as well.
Thank you for your presentation. It was very good, very informative. Aaron, I'm curious to kind of go on the previous question. What do you tell consumers when they say, my doctor said I can't eat red meat? And then two-part to that. Second part is do you all try to formulate relationships with doctors? Are they willing to have that dual dialogue?
That's a great question. So sometimes I feel like I have different approaches. Sometimes I do kind of what Kristen says is the consumer just doesn't know that most physicians had 1 or 2 nutrition classes. And so they can't know everything. Just like I don't know everything, for the infant to the elderly in terms of nutrition. So kind of owning that. I like to show them research studies. So that's where Pork and Partners does a great job of having some easy language handouts to provide a customer. Your second part. Working with, thank you. It's been a long day. Working with the doctors, yes. So that's a growing area of interest. So whether it's I do your cholesterol screening, I'm now sending those results to your doctor saying thank you for the referral. They're like, oh, she's 2 blocks down the road. I'm going to send more referrals to her. Anytime I meet with a customer, so normally I'll do an hour appointment with them. And again, that could be on whatever health condition. I'm sending a little follow-up note to the doctor, so another touch point. Even if I do that personalized nutrition tour where we're just walking the aisles, nowadays we're trying to collect like email, phone number, and then your doctor, primary care provider, so that we're just building that network even further.
Cheryl, I have a question for you. In terms of the state associations, how do you think we continue the momentum of the nutrition messaging, and where does that bubble through across the different states?
Yeah, I think that's a great question. We struggle that too. What's enough and what's more? How can we optimize? But have we gone too far? And I don't think we ever can. I think I'm with Colby. I think every time that you go into a doctor's office or something, you just feel like you're going to hear that talk. Quit eating red meat. I actually had a different experience with a dietitian recently, and she said to me, eat all the pork you want, it's too lean anyway. She was right. Like, you can eat every pork you want. She says, I don't have to talk to you about fat, but if I'm talking about beef, you have to really watch how much fat is in there. I was really surprised because I thought I was going to get that. And I also thought she was going to tell me I got to eat chicken, and I told her I don't do chicken. So, and I just never have, and it's just me. But to your point, I think we have to not be afraid to engage. And I think we definitely have to do some kind of a personal investment of team, whether it's an effort of having those conversations one-on-one in an uncomfortable space like maybe a dietitian conference, or maybe it isn't an uncomfortable space. Maybe it is just having the opportunity to look at where can we talk to the doctors and really make a connection with them. I think the chefs have really opened up to going into the barns. You might be surprised they don't have to physically go in the barn and not have a virtual field trip. One thing Ohio started was the virtual field trips. We have cameras in a lot of barns where we can get that equipment going almost in an instant. I mean, it just takes Zoom. And so we think there's a way of opportunity to just keep telling the story, but what we've got to use is the data and the research to what message are we going to use. I think our next steps that Ashley's going to help us kind of look at from a dietitian perspective is where can we connect in. One area in Columbus I'd love to do is there's a Daddy and Me where the dad's cooking. It's highly African American. We do not connect well with them in Columbus. They are ones that will come to me at the state fair and say, I don't eat pork, I eat other meats. And they will say it's a cultural thing, something that they were taught that it's a dirty meat. And I've had to ask the pork board team, can you explain that to me? I'm not trying to be insensitive. I want to understand this. I want to respond to them correctly. And so we want to just show them that this is the new pork, right? It is good for you. It's a good protein. How can we meet them where they're at, understand their concerns? At the same time, I have to respect if they're just not going to eat pork for a religious reason, they're not. We do have a large Muslim community in Ohio, and we just have to say, yep, we're not on the same page, and it's okay. But I think there is a lot of consumers out there that maybe it was just kind of built in how they were raised, and we really need to start to ask them why. And then when you start asking them, like, I can relate, I can see where they got there. But is there something we can do to change their mind? And maybe there isn't. But we just have to really listen in a different environment. And I think other places that Ashley has said is that she wants to do like online cooking, online chef contests. I'm like, I don't even know how that works. How do you taste the pork? But she gets it because she's meeting the consumer where they're at, and I'm thinking of it like a farmer. And so that's where we have to partner up correctly where we're not comfortable. And we have to go ahead and be okay to jump off the cliff and let's go. But let's use data, research to actually spend the money wisely. So I think there's a lot of opportunities in each state to really start moving the needle on eating more pork.
Okay. I think the history of like African Americans, it goes back to not slavery, sharecropping. Okay. Traditionally, they were given the inedibles of hogs.
Yep. Thank you.
The chitlins, which is intestines, pig feet, ears, stuff that's not really good if you don't season it, over season it. The over seasoning caused the health issues, but it was because they were eating those cuts. So they need to be educated. Everybody needs to be educated about eating the right cuts and the seasoning, and it can lead to healthy food.
I love that. Thank you. See, that's what I want to hear. Go ahead. Please add to that.
I'll also say I have a grandfather that's like 92 years old, and every time I go over there, they're cooking some fried pork chops.
Oh, good.
And
It's not everybody, right?
Well,
Okay.
well,
Right.
It's not North Carolina.
Right. Yeah. But no, that's the history I want to understand, so that when they come to me, especially when they're a young person, right? It's handed down by generations. Help me understand this. And maybe there's some misinformation there that we could share. Or maybe we're not going to be on the same page. And it's okay. But I want to hear you. I want to hear what you're saying and why you're not eating pork.
Yeah. Because the only way you can make those cuts, like guts, taste good, is over seasoning.
Yeah, exactly. So let me make you a loin that tastes so much better,
with
right?
A third of it, or
Yeah,
fourth of it.
yeah,
So
exactly. That's why we did that double-decker sandwich where we doubled up the loin and put coleslaw. Maybe not as healthy, but coleslaw and bacon, and that was our outrageous sandwich, right? But we really only did is feature the loin cooked correctly.
And I think education is the main thing. Like, you have to be transparent, and the questions that they have, just expound them. Like the things that they've questioned, just expound them, and then that's how you're gonna move forward. That's the only way you can do it.
Exactly. Thank you. I really appreciate that. How many learned something today?
Well, and I will also say, I mean, these dietitians that we're talking to, they're hungry for pork information. They don't know. And think about if you get asked something that you don't know much about, you're not going to talk about it. And when patients come to your office or your clinic and they're asking you about pork and you don't know, you just kind of move and you say, well, we do know that, that other white meat's lean cut. But now we are working to educate them, and then that will transcend down into all the consumer. And dietitians, they want to know, they want to talk about pork. Yeah.
So one more quick question. Thank you, all three of you, for presenting. It's great to hear the work that you're doing. Great job. My question is, 10 years ago, Nina Techholtz came out with the book, Big Fat Surprise. I read it. I thought it was great. Felt like it made a big splash at the time in the industry. Looking back on those 10 years, has there been an impact on the medical or dietitian community? And if not, is that just an illustration of how difficult it is to shift that nutritional paradigm?
It is so challenging to change the research landscape. I gave an example earlier. Raise your hand if you have been told to not eat egg yolks and just eat the egg whites in the last 15 years. Right, okay. That took 40 years to transition to allow people to eat egg yolks, even though the science all along was supporting the inclusion of egg yolks and it didn't have impacts on heart health. And so here at the National Pork Board, we have investments in human nutrition research, and so we can help to turn that tide, but it's a long game. I've told the board, I've told every single person who I've talked to, nutrition is a long game, and when it comes to research, you'll see the change. You're starting to see the change in the saturated fat, and it's going to be really interesting, I would say, over the next 5 years in the saturated fat story, because the evidence that's emerging, which producers are probably going to be really happy, right? The saturated fat is not the devil, like people have said that it is. And so it just takes time. Research takes time, and you have these anti-meat researchers that are faster than the meat researchers, I guess is the best way to say it. But we are committed at the National Pork Board to be moving that science along, and hopefully it will continue that way. But I love Nina. I love when people, go against the grain, and I think that's what we're doing, and it's fun. I mean, when we go to dietitian events, and I mean, even at the road shows, you see like the light bulb go off because they're like, wow, I've been talking about pork the wrong way for 10, 20, 30 years. We see dietitians that are retired or in the end of their career, and they've been talking negatively about pork for the entire career. And the only way to change that is get to them, boots on the ground, get in front of them, talk to them, show them, let them taste it, and then they're going to change. And that just takes time. And so hopefully we are moving in that direction. And I think we have the right people to do it. We have the money to do it. We have the resources. We have great state partners to make it all happen. We have dietitians who are committed. And so it's just part of the story, long-term game.
I just wanted to piggyback really quick and say the work that Kristen and Emily and the Pork and Partners Roadshow program has brought, it just the fact that it's so hands-on, it's very memorable, it's easy to talk to and relate to, and it really helps just spread the message and education for years to come. Like, I'm not going to forget cooking at the World or the National Pork Board headquarters and being like, oh, I just overcooked the pork. Great, but like I'm never going to forget that now. Yeah. But and just as dietitians normally, yes, fat comes up a lot. So just educating the consumer that we don't need to fear fat. Fat is back. Trying to make it fun and memorable, yeah. But I talk about it a lot.
Yeah.
Right here. I'm an AI technician in Minnesota, and I work a little bit in the farrowing barn, so I get to see all the placentas come out. So like fertility, health, and nutrition, I think is fascinating. So then looking at it from a human standpoint, watching a lot more like midwife channels, and seeing how many midwives are so pro-meat, and seeing plant, like vegan eaters placentas versus meat eaters placenta, it's like disturbing the difference, like how much healthier the meat eaters are. And so like pairing those two different nutrition worlds from pig to human and seeing that like firsthand, I think is so cool. And I don't know how much we work with like that holistic side, the midwife side, but they are doing such a phenomenal job promoting meat right now. It's so cool. So I don't know if like you guys get to work with that at all or see that?
I'll tell you, I'm a mom of 3, so I equally love all that science and nerdy stuff. But we don't work directly too much with midwives at this time. I mean, we're slowly emerging in this health professional community. And again, it takes some time. It takes some time to go out. But I'll tell you, part of pork's story is not just about protein. We talk about protein all the time, and protein is an important aspect of pork. But it's also these micronutrients, and this is part of what we're doing with educating these health professionals, right? And that's why you're seeing a lot of the significant changes when you look at a animal-based diet versus a vegan diet. Yes, it's protein, but it's all these nutrients that you're finding in animal-based foods like pork, that's the shining star. And we just don't talk about it a lot because most consumers, if I said, oh, you're high on your vitamin B12, you'd be like, what the heck does that mean, right? And that's part of the Surprisingly Pork campaign, is really to take the nutrients like selenium and like talk about food and mood, and talk about pork and energy and brain power and mental health, and it's like kind of flipping the script a little bit. And that's some of the messaging that we go forward with health professionals, and it resonates because as health professionals, we know. But how do we trickle that down into something digestible that people then can understand? Because protein is key, and animal protein is key, and it's scary in the research side of things, the amount of plant protein influence that is happening right now. And so we have evidence to be able to hopefully change that message.
Yeah, I was going to say the Surprisingly Pork campaign does address women who are pregnant and the health benefit of protein, and I think it's a really good minor segment. I don't know, minor's not the right word. It's part of that Surprisingly Pork campaign, to your point. I think it just doesn't go to that holistic level, but I think it's there. And I think it's important. That's a good call out, honestly. One thing I wanted to say about plant-based, there's something that brought up to us, and we were actually at USMEF, which is the exporters of pork, brought up, and there's a gal that talked about, she's an economist, but looks at the grocery store and restaurants and what's selling and what's not, and they asked about plant-based. And I think everybody should think about this. Light bulb went out for me is we've got we're working on the research. We are behind. We admit it, right? We all admit it. We're working on it. We're working as fast as we can about it. But we have to think about AI bots and the algorithms that are out there on social media, and plant-based has figured out how to feed that beast, and we need to feed that beast with the right information, the accurate information, because we'll never be there every second of that consumer's decision. But if they're doing a Google search or they're doing some kind of search and we fed that AI bot, I think we're too quiet sometimes in that space. This is why we need these health influencers. These are why we need these events. This is why we need to work with Erin. We need to make sure we're continuing to feeding all levels of communications to consumer, whether it's meeting them where they're at, right? One-on-one, or if it's online, or if it's through an AI bot. We have to make sure that information of pork is out there, that it's accurate, and we've done it by data and science.
So we will have time for one more question as we are nearing the end. Are there any other burning questions? Okay, one final thought. What do you want to leave our audience with as they leave? Nothing. What do you want to leave the audience with? One simple final thought.
I was just going to share one takeaway, or I'm just going to put an idea out there. You've mentioned the midwives. We've talked about just the stigma, maybe with different generations and ethnicities surrounding pork. So one thing that HighV has done, I mean, HighV is very involved in the community. Same with, I know, the pig farmers and the pork board. So maybe you either tell your story and partner with the meat department. Maybe you do a sampling event. Maybe you do a Facebook Live or YouTube or something, because I have done a cooking class with physicians for back to school. The physicians were with me. We were cooking together. It was an interesting dynamic, but maybe you try something like that. Reach out to your HighV dietitian, get a midwife, bring in the pork expert as well, and see how that goes to help share the story even further.
So I think a couple of things. Really appreciate the audience participation. Thank you. I think it helps us all understand better. I want you to challenge us. We are the caretakers of your pork dollars, and challenge us. And no matter where you fit in this segment, if you're in the barn working, challenge us. You have a great idea like that, we want to hear that, because we don't sit in our office a lot, but we do feel like we're siloed. But I think sometimes we think we're going the right direction, and it never hurts to challenge us. And I also challenge you as a producer to challenge your thinking. Open up to new ideas and opportunities.
And my final thought is, we would love to hear your voice. We go out and about at events. We would love to have more producers at events. Dietitians and health professionals and nutrition scientists, they want to know. Health professionals have never been more disconnected from their food than they are today. And if that's who is talking to consumers on a day-to-day basis, health professionals, because let's be honest, our American nation is not the healthiest, then we want your story and your voice in with all these health professionals, because they trust you, just like they trust me. I mean, they look at my credentials and they trust me. They don't even know me, right? And they don't know you, but when they hear your story, I know Erin talks about it, and when they hear your story and how committed you are to producing a high-quality protein for people, this is to feed the American people and the people all over the world. They love that, and they're like empowered to know that you care about your animals, right? And so that's what I encourage you to do. So as we close out, remember, you can subscribe for the Pork Checkoff newsletter, and then we will be up here for the last few minutes if you have any questions. But thank you so much for being here. We hope you're inspired, and go pork.